What's up, everyone? It's me again, Penny, and I feel like it's been a while since we did a story time. How's everyone been doing? It's almost the spooky season, my favorite time of year. I'm not really sure what I want to do for like Halloween. Usually on Halloween I get pretty dressed up. Last year I won second place, scariest costume is Chucky. And yeah, let's see what happens this year. I've always wanted to go as like Buffy, the Vampire Slayer. You know, like the real Buffy, the Christy Swanson one, not like Sarah Michelle Gellar one. No. But yeah, I want to wear like those purple spandex with like the yellow cheerleading outfit. So if I can pull that off, that'd be sweet. Anyway, so these stories I'm going to read, they are St. Lawrence Island. And so our dialects are different. And so some of the words might be a little bit harder for me to say. So if I say them wrong, forgive me. I'm trying. Okay. The first story we're going to read is called Old Man Gugingin and the Polar Bear. So once again, I don't know if I'm saying it right. I'm sorry if I'm not. And it's by Dorothy Hawaii. This story is about Old Man Gugingin from Southwest Cape. In his youth, he used to be strong and fast. Once he got old, he did not do much anymore. But one day he went down to the shore. As he went around a big iceberg, he came face to face with a polar bear. And those things are fucking scary, dude. A couple of years ago, in one of the villages, a mom and her baby, they both got eaten. And it was very, very sad. And condolences to the families. When you end up face to face with a bear like that, it won't run off. It will attack. So the bear charged at him. The only thing he could do was run up the iceberg. He did not have any weapon with him except for the knife strapped to his belt. When he got to the top of the iceberg, he looked back and saw the polar bear at his heels. Stymied, he pulled out his knife and held it in the air. "I'll get you with this," he shouted. "I will get you with this." When he got to the top of the iceberg, he looked back and saw the polar bear at his heels. Oh shit. As he shouted these words, the bear lurched to a halt. Fuck. As he shouted these words, the bear lurched to a halt, had a bowel attack, and highlighted it out of there. Sorry. So the bear stopped and took a huge jump and then fucked off. The bear ran one way, Gugingin the other. He ran up the steep hill to the village to alert people that the bear was around. The homes there at Southwest Cape sat on a high bluff. The villagers went after the bear and got it not too far away. And that's the end of the story. Very short story. But, I mean, it does show how scary it is, you know, with the polar bears. The next story is called A Baby Boy from Up Above. And it's by Ronald Kingikak. Aka, my grandmother, was a member of the Pagalit clan. This is a Pagalit story which she learned from her parents. Once upon a time, there was a town which had a chief. The chief of this town had 5 daughters. It's crazy. I have my full sister Nikki, my little sister, and then I have 2 half sisters. So I have like 7 brothers. I've got 5 half brothers and 2 full brothers, and I can't imagine having more than that many sisters. Every fall, the girls picked lots of berries. They went out berry picking very often. When the girls came home from berry picking, their mother, starting with the oldest girl, would transfer the berries from the picking buckets to the storage container. So we have a name for the picking buckets. We call them amucks. One of my friends, he had a dog named Blueberry Bucket, and then I would say, "Oh, how's Amok?" And he'd like, "Oh, she's fine." And then he would come up to me once in a while and be like, um, what what's BB? He called her BB. What's BB's Eskimo name again? And I'm like, Amok. I don't know why you didn't know that. So funny. Oh, he fights MMA now, so that's kind of cool. Anyway, so one year, when the berries had ripened and were ready for picking, the girls went on one of their berry picking trips. When the youngest girl had wandered a short distance from her sisters, she heard a baby crying. A newborn baby was wailing. The girl followed the sound of the crying baby. When she reached it, it turned out to be a newborn baby boy. The girl was delighted and put the baby in her berry bucket. Either it was a very big berry bucket or a very small baby. She thought her parents would be delighted because the girls had no brothers. When the girls got home, their mother, as usual, transferred the transferred the berries, starting with the oldest girl's container. As she poured out the contents of the youngest girl's container, something fell out. The girl had thought her parents would be happy, but her mother's reaction was just the opposite. The mother said to her daughter, "Oh, girl, if only your father, my husband, were not the chief of this town. You have really disgraced him. When did you become pregnant without being married?" She did not think this through. Even though the girl told her mother what had happened, her mother didn't believe her and insisted that she had become pregnant out of wedlock. I mean, it's possible. There's that show, I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant. The woman's husband was out somewhere hunting with the other men. When he came in, she said to him, "Listen, sir, your daughter has disgraced and dishonored you. If only you were not the chief of this town." "Why?" he replied. "What has happened?" "Take a look there." The man pondered a while and said, "Where did he come from?" "I think she became pregnant out of wedlock," the wife answered. The man's head sank. He said to his daughter, "You are not going to live with us anymore. I will cast you out. You will live out there somewhere. I will not allow you to live with anyone in town. You will just be all by yourself out there. I will tell everyone not to take you in." Then he threw her out. Even though the people in town felt sorry for her, they remembered that the chief had told them not to help her. So she just lived out there somewhere. When fall came, the weather turned cold and it froze. One moonlit night, her baby kept on crying. She had made a crude shelter and was living in it. The weather was getting colder and had already frozen up. There was this man named Manilok, who our hospital's named after in Kotzebue, but he was one of the people that told everyone that the women were precious and we needed to be treated better. And he was one of the people that kind of pioneered that, like we need to be treated with a lot more respect and dignity. Because back then there was a lot of superstition and stigma behind women and their reproductive stuff. But I think it had a lot to do with just kind of ancient beliefs, which in all in all societies we kind of outgrow these types of these kind of ancient myths and traditions and folklore and stuff. Even though the people in town felt sorry for her, they remembered that the chief had told them not to help her, so she just lived out there somewhere. One moonlit night, her baby kept on crying. The girl was pacing back and forth with her baby. The girl could not stand the baby's wailing, so she said, "Well, baby, don't you feel sorry for me? You are the one who got me into this ordeal." As she was walking back and forth, the moonlight was suddenly cut off for a split second. As she continued pacing back and forth, a voice behind her said, "Listen, girl, I cannot stand your suffering any longer. I've come to get you. I felt sorry for your parents because they did not have a son. I gave them a son from beyond. Come along with me. I have come for you." When the girl turned around, the man was wearing white clothes, pure white. He was on a dog sled. All his dogs were white. "Climb into the shelter on the sled," he said. Up and away he took her. It must have been a long way to heaven. As time passed, the girl got thirsty. She was parched and about to die of thirst. So the man would talk to her and say, "We're almost home. When we get there, you can drink." But the girl could not stand it. She was about to die of thirst. Finally, the man said, "All right, wait here. I'll get you some water. Don't let anyone play a trick on you. If you let yourself get fooled, there's nothing I can do. You will be lost." Then the man left. Shortly after the man left, a voice behind the girl said, "Say, girl, turn around and look at me. Let's trade clothes." The voice persisted. "Gosh, you are a very stubborn girl. The least you could do is turn around." Finally, the girl could not put up with it anymore, so she turned toward the voice. As she turned around, she saw a woman wearing a one-piece reindeer coveralls. They were very black and shiny. The woman in black said, "Let's switch our clothes. Look at mine. They are very nice." "Oh no," the girl replied. "I was told someone might try to play a trick on me." "That man led you astray," the woman in black said. "Nothing at all will happen to you." The girl was weakening. Finally, she was talked into it. The moment the girl put on the black overalls, she turned into a beetle and fell through the slats on the sled. The woman then put on the girl's clothes and climbed into the shelter on the sled. After a long while, the man returned. "Are you in there?" he asked. "Have you died of thirst?" "Oh no, I'm here waiting," the woman lied to him. The young girl could not do a thing. She had become a beetle. When she tried to talk, nothing but a sigh would come out. So the man went off, leaving her behind. The man realized what had happened, but he went on anyway. I guess the girl went on living there in the beyond as a beetle. As time went on, the beetle would see a herd of caribou coming. The beetle would try to get in the path of the herd, but the herd would pass her by before she could get in their way. She was slow, so the girl continued to live as a beetle. On another occasion, when she saw the herd of caribou coming, the beetle got a head start while they were still far away, so that she could get in front of them. The first part of the herd passed by before she can get in their path. But let's stop for a minute and go back to that man up in heaven. The baby was crying and crying. Even though the man realized why the baby was crying, he didn't do anything about it. Every time the man would return from a trip, he would ask the woman, "What did you do while I was gone?" "What did you think I was doing?" the woman would say. "I sewed. I kept right at it. My sewing finger was busy." With that, the man would keep quiet. Let's go back now to the girl who turned into a beetle. She was scrambling to get in the path of the caribou herd which was coming. The first few deer in the herd passed before she can get in front of them. But the very few last caribou in the herd nicked the beetle and cracked open the coveralls. The beetle turned back into a woman, but she was naked and she stayed that way. Oh, bah. That means so cold. One day, the man in white took some clothes and went looking for the girl. He found her. "My dear woman," scolded the man, "it's no wonder you had to live like this. You do not do as you are told. Didn't I warn you not to let yourself get tricked?" "Come with me," the man said. "I will take you home. But when we get there, don't try to play my favorite." So the man took her up, and as soon as she came in, her baby was overjoyed and came over to cling to her. Later on, the girl was able to lull the woman who had tricked her. She lulled and lulled. When the girl built a fire, that finally put the woman to sleep. As the girl lulled the woman, she would poke her to make sure she was really asleep. Finally, the woman could not be awakened. She was dead to the world. While the woman was sound asleep, the man lifted her and carried her slowly to the fire. Then the man who had brought her up to the beyond threw her into the fire. The woman made a dying, whistling sound as she went through the fire. That's how the story is told. It's about God and Satan. The two main characters in the story represent God and Satan. God Almighty had given his Son to the world. The people of this world did not accept him, just as in that story God cast down the devil. That is the theme of the story. God had promised to imprison the devil in hellfire. This is a story I like to tell my fellow man. Okay, that's very interesting.
Below is an incomplete list of Inuit deities believed to hold power over some specific part of the Inuit world, according to Wikipedia. So yeah, all these names, I don't know, maybe one or two represent God and Satan, but this was like before missionaries showed up.
So this next story is called How a Man Became a Seagull. Funny story. So my Inupiaq name is Noyak, and that means seagull.
So my mom said I was nothing like my namesake, Uncle Oliver, but I can probably deep throat a whole fish.
How a Man Became a Seagull. This is by Ronald Kingikuk. Here is another story, one that Imogen told. My daughter, the one who just went out, is called Naruya. I guess that's how they say it there. Because, like I said, the dialects are different. We say Noyak, and they say Naruya. There was also a person at Southwest Cape called Naruya. The name Naruya originally came from a man whose name was Naruya. An ice floe carrying a man and his sons broke loose one time near Southwest Cape. I think God, the way of life, used a seagull to help them out. I think he used seagulls to guide the man and his sons back to land. As they laid down to sleep, a seagull gave them strict instructions to sleep with their heads toward land. But one of the young men must have been doubtful and disobedient, little aware that this would lead to a story. The next morning, the men who had laid down with their heads towards land woke up on land. The young man was not there. He had turned into a seagull. Somewhere along the cliffs, according to Imogen, there was an altar where Aglarok and his brothers offered their sacrifices. Imogen said he had seen that seagull which had once been a young man. Its feathers had become very tattered. Its voice had lost its sharpness. Eventually, it was no longer seen. It must have died. That seagull was an ancestor of the Araks. And that's the end of that story. The next story is The Man Named Fearless, and that's by Nathan Nungo. There once was a man named Fearless. He did some gathering. He was called Fearless because he was not afraid of anything. This story about Fearless goes back many generations. In the springtime, once the ice had moved out, the people of Panuk Island, would go across to the mainland, St. Lawrence Island. They left their homes at Panuk to spend the spring on the mainland. Only Fearless would stay home. He was thinking, some illness may strike again. I think I'll try to get rid of the devils on Panuk. Even though this story took place a long time ago, there were still underground homes there from earlier times. Because back in the day, the summer homes were built out of. So we have permafrost, which is like there's this marshy tundra on the top, and then it's like ice on the bottom, and so they would make their homes sod houses, which were kind of underground and built like hills. And so that's how that's how their houses were built back in the day. They must have been the homes of our ancestors a very long time ago. Fearless was going to destroy his ancestors whose spirits were still believed to be hovering about. He was going to try to get rid of the devils at Punguk. So he planned to invite the spirits of the Punguk people to eat at his house. He went around sticking his head in the abandoned underground houses, calling out the names of the dead to invite them to come to his ceremony. He went to one home after the other and extended his invitation. Fearless prepared a big feast. When he finished the preparations, he lit a fire. It was an age-old custom for people to build a ceremonial fire and place food around it. The weapons he had must have been something like a tigonga. The tigonga of long ago was a seal oil lamp trimmer. He hid his fire-starting stick and the trimmer somewhere where he could easily get to them. Then he invited all the spirits of the dead of Punguk. So the seal oil lamp trimmer, seal oil lamp was kind of like this. It was made usually of like a soapstone. And it's got like you can put the seal oil and the wick on there, and they had like this little, it looked like a tiny little rake, and you kind of like poked at it to keep it going, so that you can have that little tiny thing kept like an igloo or a sod house warm like the whole time. And it was like very ingenious, but it was also like very useful and very innovative.
Freaking genius!
Wow! As evening approached, the devils started to arrive. Some came in through the walls, others through the ceiling. Still more came in through the walls, while others came up through the ground. Fearless assembled the devils. I'm ready to get started, he says. As the devils bent down to get at the food, Fearless grabbed his weapons and lashed out at them. He struck and killed a number of them. Some of them, however, still had magic powers and disappeared into the ground, through the walls and out through the ceiling. But the less clever devils just careered into everything in sight as they panicked. Fearless, after that, became very watchful. He couldn't sleep. He was always on his guard for the devils who might try to get even with him. Finally, he couldn't stay awake any longer. There was a large rock which would be high and dry on certain days when the tide would go out. He went out to that large rock and took a nap. To be on the safe side, however, he propped small pieces of baleen in his eyes to keep them open. And baleen are, it's like on the whale's teeth, which they use to like get all their little krill and stuff that they eat. He looked as if his eyes were open, but he was actually asleep. Even though his eyes stood wide open, he was dead, sound asleep. A racket around him woke him up. Golly, there were lots of devils gathered on the shore, but he had his weapons with him. The devils were trying to convince each other to go after him. They were saying, Imantarak, you do it. You make the bridge. They wanted to span the distance between Fearless and the shore. No, no. Kanantarak will do it, Imantaran replied. Kanantarak, the devil nearest the water, told the one at the foot of the hill to do it. No, no, he shouted. Begantarak will do it. He was the devil higher up on the hill. They all kept telling the one nearest the water to do it. Because they're all little chicken shit. Fearless thought to himself, here we go again. When he got up, he clashed with the devils once more. As he killed them, sparks were flying all about. In a short time, he finished off all the devils. Sometime during the summer, the people who had gone to the mainland returned to Punguk. They were already home when fall began. When the weather turned cold, the houses would creak and the ground would crackle. Teravak, a giant Jack Frost, was beginning his annual rounds. Fearless kept his harpoon ready and kept an eye out for Takavak. The loop at the end of his harpoon line came in through the roof vent. He would hang on to that once Takavak came into the range and he harpooned him. When Takavak would come to the house, he would fall down and bang his forehead. If the people in the house would acknowledge his bang by knocking, he would get up slowly with a big grin on his face. Fearless, however, told the people in his house not to knock and respond to Takavak's banging. When Takavak got to Fearless's house, he fell and banged against the house. Since there was no response, he got up slowly with a big frown on his face. Since he was having no luck, he just kept falling down, banging his head against the side of the house. Okay. Then Takavak fell to the ground once more, but this time toward the sea. There was no answer. As he was slowly raising his head with that big frown, Fearless harpooned him. Takavak pulled the line in an attempt to escape, but Fearless held the line from inside the house. The line sliced through the house from the roof vent right to the ground. Fearless let go of the line when it had run its length. So he lost Takavak, line and all. After the fall, during the winter, Fearless took a walk somewhere down near the water and came to a house. I think the house was in the water. There was an old man sitting by the door, and there were other men and women around. Fearless was given a welcome. People got ready to cook for him. The old man raised his head and said, "Cook for my visitor, Fearless. Cook for him." Feed him and discarded the harpoon heads, shanks, and tips. This is the way he ordered the people to cook for Fearless. Again, the old man named the harpoon parts and added clams and mussels. The people cooked a big meal for Fearless. When the cooking was done, they ate. The clams of all kinds were delicious. The Fearless ate until he was stuffed. After they had finished eating, the old man turned to Fearless and said, Fearless ate his own weapons. As soon as the old man had said this, the harpoon heads, shanks, tips, and the old skin ropes popped out just above Fearless's collarbones. Fearless had eaten his own hunting weapons. That was the end of Fearless. The last story is called The Good Provider and the Cliff Woman, and this is by Clifford Anariok. There was once a man who was a very good hunter. Every time he went out on the ice on foot or went to hunt by boat, he came home with lots of seals. His wife would hang up some of the meat he brought in to dry. She would skin some of the seals to serve as pokes, which were storage containers. Then fill them with seal meat. After some time had passed, the man was no longer bringing in any meat. The food they had dried and stored was all gone. They were out of food. The man had turned into a poor provider. Oh no, what's going on? So every like springtime in Kotzebue area, me and my sister, my mom, my grandma, and some cousins would my uncles and brothers and whoever would go and get ugruk, which was like a bearded seal, I believe. This big ass seal. And they would bring them to us, and we would spend the summer like skinning them and butchering, drying, and processing seal oil and everything. And it was just such a good time, you know, such great bonding with us Inuit females. And when the man was no longer bringing home any food, the wife thought to herself, maybe I should go gather some greens so we can have something to eat tonight. From the top of the cliffs where the woman had gone to gather greens, she glanced down as she was gathering and saw her husband coming in with his kayak, riding low in the water. When the man arrived at the shore below the cliffs, he unloaded all his meat. A woman emerged from the side of the cliffs and helped him unload. Then he went with the woman through an entrance under the rocks, and they closed the entrance. No wonder my husband couldn't provide food anymore, thought the wife. He has found another woman right here on the side of the cliffs. She left for home without taking any greens. I don't blame her. I'd be fucking pissed too. When the man arrived home, the wife said, "What's the matter? You can't seem to find food anymore." "Well," he replied, "I wonder myself too why I can't get food anywhere. Geez, I wonder why." Well, so every day the wife would go to the side of the cliffs. Whenever her husband would go off hunting, she would go up there. One beautiful, clear day when she went to the cliffs, she saw a woman sitting at the base of the cliff scraping seal skins. The wife went over to the cliff woman and asked, "Why don't you go in the village? You are all by yourself here. Don't you get lonesome?" "No," the woman replied. "From the way back, this has always been my home." "Let's check each other for head lice then," the wife said. So, any backward for head lice is kumuks. So it's like, oh, head's itchy. I have kumuks. "Let's check each other for head lice then," the wife said. Reluctantly, the cliff woman agreed. In the meantime, she had been cooking a pot full of seal meat. "Let me be the first to check for lice," the man's wife said. So she sat down and had the cliff woman put her head in her lap. Then she lulled her to sleep. After the woman fell asleep, the wife lifted her gently and laid her on the ground. Then she picked up the pot of boiling broth and poured it in her ear, killing her. Okay. Does that happen? The woman died with her ear and her brain sizzling. Oh shit, well I guess. At that sight of her head shriveled, her head tilted to one side, leaving her with what looked like a grin on her face. The wife propped her up and left her there, as if she were still scraping the seal skins. Then the wife went to the top of the cliff and lay down, waiting and watching for her husband to come in from the hunt. When the husband returned, his kayak was loaded and rode low in the water. After he beached, he said to his girlfriend, "Come help me." The dead woman did not respond. "Hurry up," he said. "Come and help me instead of being so darn proud of yourself. How come you're just sitting there with that big grin on your face? Hurry up. Come here and help me. I've got a lot of meat to unload." The woman still did not respond. "Gosh darn it. You just sit there watching me with that big grin on your face." The man was getting mad. He jumped out of his kayak, went over and yanked her. She was limp. When he checked her breathing, he realized she was dead. He clutched her, held her in his lap, and wept for his girlfriend. As his wife left the top of the cliffs to go home, he was still down there crying. He disappeared for a long time. When he finally did return, his kayak was loaded and rode low in the water. After he landed, his wife said, "This is the first time in ages you've gotten something to eat." "Yes," the man replied. "This is the first time in a long time that I have gotten food." He couldn't look at her straight in the face. She helped him to unload the food and bring it in. When they got in the house, the wife looked at him and said, "Gee, how come your eyes are so swollen?" "Well," he replied, "this is the first time in so long that I have gotten food. All that hard work must have made my eyes swollen." Okay. The wife quickly put a meal together. While they were eating, she repeated her question. "How come your eyes are swollen?" Buvit. That's how we'd say it in Ipak. When something's swollen, your face or your eyes or whatever, it's buvit. Every time she passed the food, she would ask the question again, "How come your eyes are swollen?" Finally, the man muttered to himself, "She must be the one who did it." Meantime, she kept bugging him about his swollen eyes. Then, as he kept on repeating, "She must be the one who did it," he collapsed in a heap. Okay, so I guess he died. That's literally how it ended. He just collapsed in a heap. Anyway, those were the stories. I hope y'all enjoyed them. I know Eskimo stories can be a little strange, but like this land it's mysterious, it's beautiful, it's harsh, and we have a lot of stories that we pass on from generations to generations that keep us going and keep us entertained, and kind of life lessons. Like, I don't know, don't cheat, don't steal, don't lie, I guess. Don't deceive people. And that's how we kept going for thousands of years before the missionaries came. Anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed it. And spooky season's coming up, and I can't wait. We'll see you next time, maybe, what I'm going to be for Halloween. Hopefully something really cool. All right. Bye.